like to dissect girls. Did you know I'm utterly insane?
Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?
The blackest dies.
Puny God.
Come on!
Make this pencil.
You're terminated, fucker.
Live or die, man.
Roads? When we're going, we don't need roads.
There can be only one.
Kill you all.
Goonies never say die.
We all need each other. As you can see, I'm not happier.
Are you not entertained?
This is the end, friend.
Happy trails, Hans.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Skewered Universe Podcast. My name is Jeff, and I don't have my regular co-host, Leanne, this week. But I do have two very special guests on the show with me today. We're going to be discussing the 2019 Ari Aster film, Midsommar. Yeah, it's going to be a fun romp, a feel-good time, everybody. So let's get right to the introductions. As I said, I have two very intelligent gentlemen with me today from Invasion of the Podcast and Strange Highways. Let me welcome Paul Tiberius Steadman. How are you doing today, Paul?
Good. I don't know if I can live up to the intelligent part of this, but I'm certainly here to talk about some parking in the sun.
All right. Sounds good. And trust me, with the way this show goes, you'll boost the intelligent quotient a lot, believe me. Because I'm not that bright. My wife usually brings the intelligent part to the conversation. And secondly, we have a man who is a personal friend of mine. Actually met him through Leanne when we started dating. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you, Patrick French, to the show.
Hey,
how are you doing, Pat?
I'm all right, Jeff. How are you doing today, my friend?
You know, it's a sunny Sunday, and we're going to discuss a lighthearted film. So I'm good.
Yeah. Gather around the children and the popcorn, everyone.
I find it suspect that you picked Sunday to talk about this. I don't know how I feel about coming into this now. I'm suspicious of everybody.
Yeah. Just as long as you're not serving us any baked goods, Jeff, I'll feel okay about this podcast. Okay, no Swedish cultic baked goods, please. Don't need them.
Well, I guess I'll push those into the closet where I was keeping the bear suit and the certain glass of pink lemonade. But we'll get to that eventually.
My podcasting room under my bed last night, so this will come out as an okay recording. But we'll see. You know, that's about as far as I went.
All right. So, Midsommar, we've all seen it. 2019, directed by Ari Aster, starring Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner. I'm probably going to butcher this name. Wilhelm Blomgren, William Jackson Harper, Will Poulter. A pretty solid cast, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
nobody. I don't think anybody was lacking in their acting ability. Everyone did exactly what they needed to do, and it was good. I don't think I could pick out one person and be like, you weren't quite on par with everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, I have a hot take on this film in terms of we'll get into that, but yeah, I think all of the acting involved and the filmmaking technically I felt was really excellent. It's more or less the numerous kind of plot holes that I take issue with. I think I have a differing opinion of this film than you guys, but totally 100% agree with you. Acting was great.
Yeah, let me put it to the both of you guys here. So I'm going to derail here. That's what I do. With this kind of cast, Yeah, this kind of film with A24, I know that they kind of fancy themselves as like this, distributor that's like a little bit more high-minded, whatever. We got faces being mashed with clubs here. We know what kind of film we're watching. But, with that being said, though, I think with the casting of this and then also like Hereditary, I like that the casting, not only is it good, like they take the film seriously themselves. Like there's humor in this. I mean, there's actually this film, if you look out the corner of one eye, it's a super black comedy, and I love that. And Hereditary has its moments too, but just because there's humor, it doesn't mean that the actors have to play it with humor. And I think that sometimes that's been lacking in the horror movies I like, where a lot of stuff that's come out past 10, 20 years, sometimes you have to go for a joke as opposed to just let the characters be. And if there's humor, fine. I think there's this weird 70s sensibility that runs through both Hereditary and this, that maybe it's just my own personal taste, but I dig it. And I think it comes through in the casting for both films.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you, Paul. I think there's I'm not a film expert by any means or have any real qualifications to speak on filmmaking, but I've always heard that the line of delineation between horror and comedy is this razor thin edge to walk. So it's really cool to see filmmakers and actors and situations where they kind of embrace that and go with it, but not, you don't want to turn your horror film into like a slapstick comedy, and that can happen where you're just taken out of the mood of the film. I think Midsommar never really, that line was always sort of walked very delicately, and I never got out of the kind of underlying strangeness of the film. But yeah, there are definitely some funny moments.
Yeah, I mean, because I think there's a difference.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. I'm Jeff. It's your podcast. Please speak over me.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead. I can make my point after.
I have a problem talking too much, but no, I was just going to say this. Like, there's a difference between like a movie joke, and a joke that just comes organically from like a script. And I think this movie, with the exception of Will Poulter, you could tell that they put some insert dialogue of him, because you could tell Ari Aster just loved everything he was saying. And there's a lot of shots where you see the back of Will Poulter's head, and whatever's just coming out of his mouth, they put in later. And that's okay, because he's supposed to be the obnoxious, like, American tourist. I get that character, but there isn't, like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes movies go for a joke that they're making the joke for the audience because they're making a movie. And this, where it's like the jokes are organic because the characters are they're people and they're existing. And like Mark, Will Poulter's character is like freaked out about nature, and then they start talking about ticks and just messing with him. You could do that to your friends. Like, that's what comes organically out of this. Or whenever Christian drops on his buddies that, hey, I've invited Danny to come with us. Just, she's not, but she's coming. Like, that's all, like, that all feels like life, and there's humor there. And I wasn't where I was going to go with this conversation to begin with, but I like with the casting and the grounding here that you are laughing with them and enjoying with them, which makes the second half of this film, that's the whole point of a good horror film, right? Like, you care for some of the people, and then you get put through the ringer with them. And I think this does a good job of that too. So Jeff, sorry, please, it's your show.
No, I was gonna say it's perfectly fine. I tend to derail the show myself, so feel free. And Pat, I am not a film expert either, so we're on the same page.
Yeah,
I did appreciate Will Poulter's character, the not blatant in your face humor that he delivered with those lines. It wasn't like, hey, he's the jokester, he's the fool, huh?
Exactly.
It was things you would hear a friend of yours say who's that kind of person.
Yeah.
Like the tick thing, really, the third time that I've seen it now, I was listening and I'm like, oh, they're screwing with him big time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that was, that like Paul and like you're saying, Jeff, the dialogue and the script that was provided to these guys, you could tell that they really kind of vibed and gelled there. And it was very, relatable in that sense. But, I think ultimately if we're talking about the characters, and we're probably not, we're just talking about the actors right now, but it's just funny to me that when you step back and you look at these characters, again, hot take here, just a thoroughly unlikable group of characters. I'm sorry, but these guys, I don't know. I guess maybe I never went to college, and maybe that's how, like, college buddies are, where they try and steal each other's thesis, or I think it's not theses, but just a group of really kind of unlikable people. Just my opinion, though.
Yeah, that's kind of where I fall. Like, the only person I really felt that they wanted you to like and feel for was Danny, and we'll touch on that. I'm gonna run down a brief synopsis here once we kind of get into everything. But yeah, I was on the same page. There wasn't a whole lot of likability amongst the group. Like, I think certain people, like Mark, you kind of a little bit, you were like, okay, you're still kind of a jerk because we've seen what you've done before, but we all have that friend that we're like, but for the most part, I didn't really like most of the characters, our main characters there.
Well, I mean, good thing, because most don't make it out. So
oh man, too soon, Paul. Too soon.
Oh, sorry, spoilers. I didn't.
No. We're just to disclose ahead of time, anyone listening to this who hasn't seen the movie yet, don't listen, because I have a feeling we can't thoroughly discuss this movie like we want without spoilers being given. So if you haven't seen it, turn this off, come back later. That's, I mean, it's
it's
a movie that if it gets spoiled.
Yeah, if you come up with spoilers, someone's going to hit you. Someone's going to hit you with a mallet. If you keep listening to this and you've not seen the movie, you're seeking forbidden knowledge. You're going to get struck with a mallet. That's what's
right. That's right. Turn off that heart crystal.
All right. So, basic synopsis here. We have a group of 5 friends: Danny, Christian, Josh, Mark, and their Swedish friend Pelle, who has come to study in the US. Danny has gone through a recent, very traumatic event involving her sister and her parents in a murder-suicide orchestrated by her sister. So she right away is not good mentally. Yeah. She is not with all her faculties. She gets invited by Christian after they go to a party to go to Sweden. They end up going because Pelle wants them to see this festival they have. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They get there. It's very beautiful. It's a little strange. And from there, they start seeing the inner workings of how things go. I'm going to leave it there because things kind of start to shift in another direction from the serene beauty to, excuse my language here, but what the actual fuck?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
so, like I said, brief synopsis. So if anyone wants to jump in with how they felt about the beginning of the film, where it kind of just immediate gut punch, go right ahead.
I was going to say, it goes from like an episode of Saved by the Bell in the beginning, like the first maybe 10 minutes. And then it takes a steep dive downwards, trigger alert here. And then it kind of goes back up into, this weird sort of Grateful Dead concert in a foreign country, except there's a Swedish cult involved, where everybody's, using substances. Yeah. And then it only gets worse from there. So I'll let Paul jump in here, because Paul, I think, might be able to surmise this more concisely.
Well, I know just in passing of reading some stuff, and by the way, I'm by no means like a film person. I'm not smart at all. I worked at a Blockbuster for 5 years, so that tells you that I am not good financially, and also yeah. Anyway, I've been around a lot of movies, but that doesn't, like, as you say, you used to tell us what at training a Blockbuster. It's like, you're surrounded by stars every day. Bullshit. I do love movies, and I didn't realize that I actually kind of had like this appreciation for like folk horror that was never really something I was into. Watching this, and then and I'm not going to drag the conversation in these directions, but there's the Netflix film Apostle that's amazing. That has oh shit, what's his name? The guy from Dan Stevens. This is in that, and it's really, really good. And then also, in kind of reverse order, after seeing Midsommar, I ended up watching the original Wicker Man. So I didn't realize, like, I kind of have like this appreciation for this, like, people, people out of sync coming into this other group, like this other world that they don't know, right? And they kind of like. Everybody else is getting along. Everything seems kind of okay on the surface. Like, is it just me, or is there something else going on here? I didn't know I had that kind of thing I like with this. Like, and even like The Witch would probably even go like with that a little bit too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Except we're with the outcasts, not the other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, definitely that genre of stranger in a strange land, that kind of permeates this film for sure. And that is, like you're saying, Paul, that is a very specific kind of horror that I think kind of is coming back a little bit. I mean, it kind of reminds me of a genre that I love and a series of films that I love. And that's the whole, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, the originals, the Romero originals, Night of the Living Dead, where you have literally, living people, and to an extent Land of the Dead, I guess. You have living people who are kind of amongst the dead. And so again, they're these strangers in a strange land with familiar elements. And I'm not saying Midsommar is anywhere near that, but I think that genre, I worked at a Suncoast motion picture company back when that was still a thing back in the 90s, and I was surrounded by movies too. And
you're surrounded by stars every day.
Stars every day. Yeah, I did meet Tony Hawk once. Came into my store and I didn't know who he was, and he showed me his ID, and I was like, "Oh, the Tony Hawk," and he's like, "Yeah," but that was my only run-in with a star. I almost got run over by Keanu Reeves when I was working at the Suncoast in Burbank as well, and I was trying to get to work, so there was that. But oh
wow,
yeah, I know that's for a different time. But I think that element is very, very on display with this film for sure. And like you were saying, I think we were having a little chat beforehand. The kind of 70s, that vibe, that folk horror vibe of the 70s was, when I think about this film, I can definitely see what you're saying when you reference that.
Yeah. So I mean, I didn't know that it was something that I was really into, and it's one of those things where it's not my typical jam in terms of like horror films that I like. I know I kind of get stuck in like, I don't know. I'm more of a body horror person just because I believe in science as opposed to ghosts. I just, I don't know how else to equate that. Like, I'm not saying there's not good ghost stories out there. It's just that a lot of it's like, well, they can do anything. All right, I guess if you just leave the house, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So with which also makes Hereditary also like really like that movie shouldn't work for me in a lot of ways, but my God, that gets under your skin and it just doesn't let go of you. But yeah, like, so I didn't know, so thinking about it further, I guess also what I dig about this film in terms of like, Ari Aster said that this film came out of, he wanted to write a film about a breakup that he had. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened in that relationship that you wanted to write about? This is ultimately a breakup film in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of simplifying it, right? But you got Danny who has she's in this toxic relationship, and then she loses her family because her sister commits suicide and takes her parents with her. So the Danny has nobody. So you have that image at the beginning of her just, and credit to Florence Pugh, like that kind of crying you don't hear in films. You hear that in real life when someone gets off the phone. Like that's that punch in the gut. You're like, that's family member related. Like you don't hear those noises, like, unless everything has gone wrong. And how you got Christian Jack Rayner just holding her, and they're in the same room together, but she is alone as alone can be in the snow outside. You got that. So you got her on uneven footing, but they're in this relationship that neither one wants to give up on because he's afraid he's not going to do any better, and she doesn't know what she's going to do without him. And then they just go to, you know, the land of the midnight sun, and they hope that maybe that'll fix their relationship.
Yeah, the ultimate codependent relationship there.
Yeah, which they're codependent.
Yeah.
They go to an actual like group, the community that is literally codependent.
Yeah,
It's like that's crazy to me. I love that thought process.
yeah,
So I mean,
Yeah,
it's all,
it definitely, seeing those opening scenes, it hit a little closer to home for myself and Leanne, my wife. And to peel back the curtain here, I've already talked to her about this. She lost her mother not that long ago. And we went into this film both going, yeah, we want to see it. Not knowing that right in the beginning, it was, oh, hey, here's this very real, very tragic thing that happens.
yeah,
And it was because that wound for her was still very raw, and I was feeling with her. We were both just like,
yeah.
So the first time we watched it, I actually went past that a little bit,
yeah,
because you can still get what she's going through, but Florence Pugh, man, her crying, I heard that,
yeah,
you know, not too long before, so I felt. I think that's what drew me into her character, was like, I've been with someone who was feeling that exact same reaction. So it was like, okay, I'm already endeared to this person because she's gone through this heartbreak and tragedy. And it made me hate the character of Christian, because not only was he like gaslighting her on the phone when she was talking about her sister in the beginning, then he's gaslighting her after they come back from the party about going to Sweden. He's just not likable. He doesn't know how to just break it off with her, because like you said, Paul, he doesn't think he's going to do any better. And unfortunately, Danny is in a position where she's like, I need someone, and at least he shows up. But I think the one thing that really got me was when Christian was walking to her after she called and he just heard her crying. He's taking his time getting there, just walking. And the look on his face is like, I don't want to be doing this, but I guess I have to, because she needs at least someone. And he's physically there, but he's checked out. He's somewhere else completely.
for sure. You know, I'm going to disagree with you guys on this. See, I think so. Midsommar kind of lost me at several different steps, and I haven't seen Hereditary. I've watched many clips of the film. I should probably sit down and watch it. But with you, like you, Jeff, you know, my capacity for certain types of horror after becoming a dad has really diminished. So things involving kids or the suffering of children or families really hits too close to home for me now. Whereas 10 years ago, I could have watched it and laughed and thought it was funny. Because I'm just a really damaged, callous human being, I guess.
Don't watch Hereditary then. Oh my god. What took you not to watch that movie then?
Yeah. I want to steer away.
But yeah, so I've seen some clips of it, and I was like, maybe I'll steer past this one, even though I'm super interested in the cast. It's fantastic, and the character actress who plays the mom, I've seen her in a ton of stuff. I can't remember her name now, but she's amazing.
Oh, Toni Collette.
Toni Collette,
is
yeah.
amazing.
Oh man, amazing actress. But I feel like that. I feel like the plot was like really contrived at this point. Like I really feel like that was such an amateur filmmaker move to kind of it's kind of like in a boxing match where, you know, you got a fighter who, you know, can beat the other fighter handily. Maybe this is going to be a poor analogy. And instead of just straight up boxing the other fighter, they keep going for the, you know, the body, or for the, you know, below the belt blows and the clinches when they don't need to do that. And I kind of feel like Ari Aster didn't need to necessarily go there. I mean, he wrote the film and you know, ultimately he was smart enough to get lots of people to spend lots of money making this film. But I feel like that's like the very first part of the film that I felt was really contrived to me. And then at the same time, it's like also there to show you how dysfunctional and how kind of passive aggressively toxic the relationship between the two main characters is. But I just was kind of like it that scene, the scene where they're kind of where he's panning through the house and you see the mom and dad and you're like, oh, they're sleeping, it's fine. And then they go through the rooms and that filmmaking is amazing. Like, it builds tension, it's great, the music, it's technically brilliant and technically interesting, but it's such a low blow that I'm just like, okay, this film is now moving at the speed of plot. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that was my hot take on that particular part of the film.
I can definitely see where you're coming from, since I've seen the movie 3 times, so I can see your point of view. It's I know. I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm a sucker to torture myself, apparently. But I think it hit the way it did for me just because having gone through something with Leanne so recently.
Yeah.
But like I said, having watched it again, I can see your point. So I can't discredit what you're saying. I do think there's some merit behind what you're saying. And ultimately it did work for me, but I can totally see your point. That's the main thing I'm getting to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying in terms of like, it just kind of, it does jumpstart the narrative and there could have been other ways of handling it. I would view it as like, and again, it's purely a creative choice where Hereditary was a slow burn and then it just explodes in like the last, 20 minutes of that film. Mm-hmm. That's where it's like, I feel like he was like, I'm going to come right out of the gate.
Yeah.
As like upset, and you're on the side of Danny, and you guys need to understand, like, she's coming from this, like, her whole life's cratered. And I think having that slow movement through the house too, and then how with when we get to whatever the name of the day 2 event of the cliff diving, we get to that.
Yes.
Because I know they draw the parallel where they show the sister there for a second, right? It's like, it's again like, that both are versions of trauma. One is Danny didn't see it, and now it's right in her face. So, like, how do you take something that's already broken and like how do you further break them? Like, I can understand with you saying that it's hitting below the belt, and I guess what I'm saying is like I agree with that. Like, I want the audience to be off kilter if that's my goal. I'm not saying there's other ways to go around that. I'm not saying there's not ways of writing that differently. But if that doesn't automatically kind of like get your attention, like, oh, this isn't good. And that's the only time we really see darkness in this entire film, right?
Yeah.
Like, that also I think means a lot too, right? Like the one true night scene is the intro. And it's the exact opposite, like, situation.
Yeah. No,
Right.
I agree with
the
you.
The contrast.
100%. Yeah, no, for sure. And that's a great point. And I didn't even really think about it because you're absolutely right, Paul. That scene is the only night scene in the film. Everything else is very bright. Everything else is very colorful. And I think maybe, like you're saying, Ari Aster definitely picked his spot there. I don't know. I guess maybe it just kind of pulled me out because there's, the sister like having issues and you're kind of, as an audience member, you're immediately interjected into this drama with this character and her boyfriend, and that's relatable, and then she has a sister and the sister's not responding. I mean, I don't know. There was just something about the setup right out of the gate that kind of took me out of the film. It was almost as if I felt like that was, and again, I'm not a film critic, and I'm sure you guys have seen it way more than I have. And Jeff, you've seen it 3 times, and you guys are probably better able to speak on this. But I feel like you could have cut that entire first 20 minutes out of the movie and still had an effective film. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if the filmmaker really explored. I don't know. It felt very contrived to me. It felt like, let's put this house up as fast as we can. Let's get you into this. And it didn't feel organic to me. I think the scenes where they're, where all of the friends are talking about bringing, Danny along to Sweden were kind of effective, but that first sort of intro scene, or even if you cut out the first 5 minutes where she's talking about, my boyfriend, is going to leave me and I don't think he likes me, yada, yada, yada. Even if you just had that slow pan through the house as the opening scene, I almost feel like that would kind of frame the film, a little more effectively, because
you could have told that story like shorter. I agree.
Yeah. Like in media res, you're right in the action, and then boom, if you're going to punch somebody in the face right out of the gate, then, like a la Irreversible, where a guy's getting his head smashed in with a fire extinguisher in the first, 2 minutes of the film. It's like, it's a dark film. It starts out dark, and let's just get to it. That would feel far less contrived, but that's just, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I think it was important, that brief bit whenever Danny was talking to Christian, and goddamn, we're actually going scene by scene through here, and this is not what I wanted to do.
Sorry guys, I totally derailed.
No, we'll move on quickly.
But she's talking to Christian though, and she's trying, like, you can see that she's in like extreme panic, and like there's like tears in her eyes, and you don't hear it in her voice, and she's trying to get like talk to Christian, and it's like, I think that's very important for her character, and I also think it's very important for us to get on the side of Florence Pugh, because I don't know how difficult it is. Like, I know when I get emotional, I start sounding like a donkey braying regardless. Like I can't control my voice at that point. And it's like, it would have been like, that is just crazy how she's able to do that and try to sound like upbeat. And while, you could tell that there's real panic in her, like her voice, and then him just missing and gaslighting, like you said, and then to find out like, oh shit, he was wrong. Like, there's a lot there. I also just want to mention real quickly before we get to the Grateful Dead concert, and I like that there's two scenes there where after the party, when Danny and Christian come back to her place, and he walks out of frame and sits in the chair, and you see him reflected in the mirror, and they're clearly divided, talking about the Sweden trip. And the moment she starts to like try to like make him feel better, she goes into frame with him and they're together. I think that's important because it shows them being divided. And then when she finally like gives up the ghost and loses the battle and talks to him about it, they're in frame together. And then later on, the next scene, when they're at was it one of the apartments? I don't know whose apartment it was, the other people's apartment. When Christian's telling the guys, "Hey, I invited Danny," you see him in the mirror, and those dudes are sitting all by like together. So again, he's dividing himself. And the frames are showing these guys standing off, and the reflections, I think, speak a lot. It might be efficient filmmaking, which it is. Part of my brain's like, there's something here, and I don't know. It was really interesting to see that. And then later on, with her going to the outhouse in the middle of the LSD fields and seeing the reflection there too. I think there's, again, it's all the hallmarks of a good storyteller and a good, a director and cinematographer, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said for the self-reflection, right? Because the whole movie's really about like realizing who you are and what part you're playing in all this, because whether they like it or not, all these people are playing the part they meant to play in this.
Oh yeah, totally. And that's kind of like,
exactly.
Yeah. And that's evident. I think Ari Aster definitely kind of spells that out in the first 20 minutes of the film, especially with all of, the rest of the Swedish trip. He literally shows you a storyboard. They literally pan across the storyboard for the film within the first 25 minutes of the film.
In the opening shots, that tapestry.
Right. It's there laid out.
Yeah, it's spelled out for you.
The very opening, we have the large tapestry, and then once they get to the Grateful Dead LSD drug trip commune, they pass by that banner, which again just tells you like, here's what you're gonna see. Yeah. This is the movie. If you pay attention, you're getting everything now. Now you're just gonna see how it plays out.
It was
I wanted to go back.
Sorry, it's
real
like the
quick.
shittiest X Games ever,
Real
right?
quick,
That's what it is. It's not a Grateful Dead concert.
Yeah.
It's the shittiest X Games.
X Games, like the worst X Games. Yeah.
Cliff
The
diving,
extreme
you got
cliff
Hammer
diving.
toss,
I wanted to touch on. I wanted to touch and briefly, and then we'll move forward here because we don't want to go scene by scene. That scene in the apartment where Christian is telling them, I think it served two purposes. And one, Paul, you touched on the self-reflection of him being off screen, but we see him in the mirror. I think it served purpose too, so you could see the reactions of Mark, Pele, and Josh as he tells him. Josh seems nonplussed. He's like, okay, so you asked her. If she goes, fine. If she doesn't, fine. Mark seems immediately annoyed, like, well, I was going to get tail. We were all going to, make out with Swedish chicks. What the hell are you doing? Pele just smiles.
Yeah.
He just smiles like, okay, it's all falling into place. And Leanne made a point, my wife, she made a point to say Pele has a very cherub-like face, like the kind of pudgy cheeks and the smile and the bright blue eyes. So he's very like comforting. He kind of just draws you in a bit. You think, oh, he's not a threat. Yeah. But he orchestrated this whole thing to get these people together, and you're like, you. And
okay. I'm gonna jump in.
There's a lot going on.
I'm going to jump in here. And I think that to me is where the first act of this film falls down, right? Is because the motivations of the friend group are so inexplicable because we don't have context, right? We have context on Danny's character. We know what Danny's character's going through, but we don't have context on the boyfriend. I can't remember his name now. Her boyfriend's character, because he's kind of almost like a cardboard cutout. He's a blank slate. We know that he has issues with emotion or what have you, but there's no context for that. I think if there was some sort of context to make that character a little more three-dimensional at the very beginning of the film, and I understand there are time constraints and all of that stuff, but that's what made it so inexplicable to me to like sit there. And that's why I've read all the theories online about Pele and Pele and the cult sort of orchestrating this whole thing. And I'm just like, I feel like that's a really deep read into a beginning act that seems light on material to me, or light on background. Like, there are people who are saying, oh, the cult orchestrated Danny's family's murder. And I'm just like, guys, whoa, like let's ease back on the fan fiction here, because that is not, at least in my opinion, at all conveyed in the opening of the film. And I'll let you guys take it away. Sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to jump on you on that.
Right. Oh, no. I think maybe it was just he wanted to get a group of people where they fit into certain areas that they needed to fit into. Not that the cult was behind, her sister's mental illness and the death of the family. That to me is far-reaching. But I think he was sent there to get certain people, and when he found the right group, someone who is dealing with issues, who ends up being broken, someone who can't connect emotionally and is pretty much has no drive to do anything. Yeah. And then someone who wants to know more, and then someone who's just, for lack of a better term, a horn dog.
Yeah.
A jerk and a horn dog. That's Mark. So all right. Let's get forward. I kind of want to know what you guys think about the commune, the cult, the Grateful Dead, the hippie, drug, everyone constantly on some sort of.
Well, you said X, I think it's actually X, like as an ecstasy. It's X Games now. That's what it is to me. That's what it's going to be. Same over again. It's a Fish concert around the Maypole. I like the idea of the commune. It's one of those things that almost feels like it'd be like going, like, I'm in Ohio. I'm in Cleveland, and we do have Amish communities south of here, but it'd be like going to like eastern Pennsylvania, right, and going to like Lancaster or whatever, and it's like it almost feels like another world, right? Like that would be where they have their own customs, but they're also aware of where they are. Like there's the whole notion of they're a pretty progressive group of people, because at one point the one girl's like, well, they're watching Austin Powers if you want to go join us. Like they're not, it shows that they're connected, right, to the world. It's just that they have realized that they've come to the belief that their ways of what support them and that their ways are what are family. It's just because they're aware of what is going on. Like at one point I was watching this on Friday night with my wife and a friend of mine, and my wife's like, yeah, nice plastic tubs there they're washing the dishes in. I'm like, yeah, they're not like without like the knowledge of this, you know. I like that. To me almost feels like them. That's almost those experiences that you see all like the social media influencers are trying to go see that thing no one can see, like be out in the real world, man. Like it's what it feels
so authentic.
Yeah.
They're so authentic, Paul. And you know, but you could see a group of them visiting IKEA to buy some plastic tubs to wash their dishes in and interacting. Yeah, 100%. I agree with you on that, Paul. I too am, I'm getting serious Children of God vibes here, you know, that cult. That's one of the things I'm super into is true crime and cults, and definitely some Children of God vibes there, you know, mixed in with, you know, historically wasn't Sweden one of the last kingdoms of Europe to be fully Christianized by, you know, the Crusaders and by, you know, the various European continental powers who brought, you know, the religion of God into their country, you know. I mean, I knew side story here. I knew a girl from Sweden back in the 90s, and we used to talk about her, you know, what life was like back in Sweden. She's like, yeah, every May we had like this May celebration in our village, because I guess she came from a small town in Sweden. She's like, there'd be a maypole there and people would dance, and there'd be like this big community festival. And she's like, eventually it would devolve into people hopping around the maypole like frogs. And she like laughed kind of nervously. And I'm like, yeah, that's fucking weird. And I was like actually legitimately terrified. I'm like, this is the beginning of like an H.P. Lovecraft story here where, you know, the Swedish cult members of Dagon, you know, devolve into, you know, fish people, and they're flopping around the maypole, you know. So I think I'm 100% on board with you guys. They really managed to capture the otherness of that place and the strangeness of that place, and especially the sort of, again, I keep going back to this word because this word totally describes the film for me. It's very inexplicable, right? Like the whole experience of walking into that place that is of a different time, but not of a different time, and of a different place, but not of a different place, is incredibly inexplicable. And you know, I think you used the word, Paul, off kilter. It does definitely put you in this place of like, what the hell is going on here? You know, like me myself, I'm instantly out. I'm like, put me back in the van, the European cargo van, the Eurovan that brought me out here, because I'm going back to Oslo or wherever it was I flew into, and I'm leaving, because it just, you get bad vibes. I immediately got bad vibes, you know, when they're saying it took us 4 hours to get here. And, you know, especially if I'm an outsider and I don't speak the language, you know, some people might see that as an opportunity. I see that as a potential, you know, final boy, final girl situation, and I am out. I'm gone.
Red flags are going up everywhere.
Yeah.
It feels a lot like the Bible Belt to me, and I don't want to, like, in the sense that like I grew up in West Virginia, and there's pockets of like that, you know, yeah, you could find pockets of mountain areas with just a bunch of white people. I don't know, just throwing it out there. But like everybody, like it's one of those states that I've never been someplace where I feel so welcomed until they find out, like, until they'll love you until you're different. Right. And and that's that's how I kind of feel about my home state. And that's kind of the vibe I get here, where it's like, welcome, here's what we do. Like, we'll tell you everything. Oh, wait, you're going to go pee on our ancestor tree. Well, guess we got to kill you now. Like, you just like, in terms of like their rituals. I mean, yeah, it's just, is there celebration of what they do outside of like, the human sacrifice portion of it? Or the things that they do, is it any weirder than a lot of the holidays we take for granted now, though? Like, I think it's a matter of, I think it's also part of the film too, especially Josh's character, William Jackson Harper. He kind of goes in viewing this as like, under the microscope, and because of that, he wants to extract information, and it's like he's accepting because he knows it's going to advance him forward with his thesis. And I think the thing he makes the mistake of is that they keep offering him knowledge, but when he keeps like trying to take more, that's when he crosses a line. Mm-hmm. But yeah, in terms of like their welcoming and their traditions, like, dude, I also went to a Pentecostal church when I was in high school. You want to talk about being in mainland America and seeing some weird shit in a church, like we can talk, I mean, there was no Gallagher show with head splitting going on, but you talk about foreign languages, supposedly.
Well, hey, if you guys are ever in Oceanside, or Vista, California, you can have your own Midsommar experience by visiting the Yellow Deli. Amazing food, really nice people, definitely cult-run establishment. I remember I went there once, or I went there many times. I used to go there all day, day after day for their yerba mates. And I wasn't employed at the time, and one of the guys noticed it, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to come join the family and work at the deli with us? He invited me to this dinner that they have for, curious people. And then, 2 months later, I could have potentially been in the cult and working 18-hour days at the deli. You're only ever questionable decision away from jumping off a rock head first onto another rock. I mean, that's fair. That simple.
So in terms of like the off filter and the otherworldly, it's like, I think if you take one group of people that aren't familiar with what is considered the norm, you're always going to get that uneasiness. And I think in the sense that we as the viewer coming into this, like, that's odd. But when you flip it and it's like, nope, this is just business as usual.
Yeah.
No, it's just kind of a weird thought you have going through. Like, they all have their explanations for what they do. Whether or not we understand or agree with it, that's on us. But like, they seem to be fine doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got that uneasy feeling as soon as they were walking in, and everyone's just standing around staring at them, and there's people playing their flutes off to the side. I'm like, I'm not cool with people just staring at me as I walk somewhere. So this is really off-putting, and I'm out. I would have tapped out right there, and I'd be like, I don't care if it's 4 hours. I can't run that fast, but I'm going to make my way back as soon as possible.
Yeah. I'm leaving. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to catch an Uber. How's the signal out here? Because I'm definitely gone. It's
a beautiful march. I don't know why you didn't feel welcome there, though.
Well, you know what's kind of funny about the film here too is it definitely subverts your expectation, because you go into the film obviously a stranger in a strange land, right? And if you take like that old adage, when in Rome, Ari Aster doesn't tell you, he lets you know you're in Rome, okay, but he's not gonna tell you, or he doesn't give you any hint except for that very first scene with the tapestry, what the Romans do when they're in Rome. So that's even more off-putting. It's even more strange, or even more isolated. The film, these opening sequences with the big wide open spaces and the cinematography and the whiter than white garments that the cult members are wearing, and the colors and that kind of I guess the overall theme of like almost like this cleanliness and this earth friendliness and the sustainability, like it's so jarring, to I think the average viewer's senses. Maybe not like horror guys like us who are like instantly like, red flag, we're leaving. If it was the three of us, I mean, I might stay for dinner, but then we're definitely leaving in the middle of the night. I don't care how fast we got to get out of there, but we're walking.
They realize I'm too fat for the bear suit, and they would.
Yeah. They realized that they would need a bigger. They'd have to a house that's 10 times bigger to provide enough fuel to deal with me at the end of the film. But
does he know what his pies are made of? It's like, oh no, he's eaten 8 of them so far. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. They'd want me to survive just so they could snuggle me in those cold Swedish winters. I mean, why kill your golden goose there? I'd be, but anyway, yeah, it's very again, very inexplicable, and I felt like that part of the film, that to me, that whole introduction into their world, I feel like was technically and thematically and plot wise the strongest part of the film.
Right. And I do want to touch on something about the representation of how this group of friends, how they appear when they're showing up to the commune. Because Leanne and I were talking before, and she said, Danny is not sexed up like you would get in some typical horror movies. Mm-hmm. They're not wearing these ridiculous outfits. They're very much like normal, just drab clothes. They just got off a plane. They're dressed like anyone would be if they had just got off a plane and were like, okay, well, we got to make our destination. Let's just get there. And I agree with her on that. They didn't sex up the girls. I mean, we'll get to where that goes at some point.
Yeah, they do definitely sex up the girls.
They didn't put her in a crop top and short shorts. Yeah. Yeah. But they didn't do it with Danny, and I found it refreshing because there's so many of these films.
Yeah.
Where your main character, your final girl, at some point is like, oh, she's running around in her underwear, or oh, there's the weird interjected shower scene so we can see her. It's her vulnerability. I'm like, no, her vulnerability was right at the beginning and is still there forefront, and they didn't have to go, well, we need you to wear booty shorts and this see-through top. Can you do that? Because we want to get the guys to watch this movie. It wasn't like that. And I was like, I'm okay with that. We got way more male nudity than I expected, but we'll get there.
Well, I think this film is deeply, on a certain level. I feel like this film is deeply anti-sexual. I think it's almost. I mean, if you're viewing it from that lens, you would see this film almost as a rejection of that sort of character. Danny embodies the ultimate rejection of that final girl sort of what's the word I'm looking for? She is the Boba Fett of final girls. She's like the anti-hero of this film. And I would, the later scenes when they're in their lodgings, when they're in their accommodations, and you hear the babies crying, and the women are trying to shush their babies. I mean, to me, as if I were the Pat of 20 years ago watching this movie, like going, yeah, man, I can't wait to see. Sorry, this is kind of crude, but like those movies, you're like, oh yeah, that girl's attractive. I don't mind looking at her, because she's attractive. I feel like this film went in the entire opposite direction. Was like, you could almost view this as like a PSA for being responsible in relationships and not trying to screw people over.
Yeah, it wasn't an exploitation of her.
Yeah. In the director's cut, there was a Harga car wash that happened with all the female residents. I don't
nice.
No.
I mean,
that's a great fundraiser idea.
I gotta find that.
And it was the same song that they played during the Maypole dance. It was weird. I don't know. Anyway, but that's a good point. And also looking at the trivia on IMDb for what it's worth, Jack Rayner's Christian made a point of saying that after his thing that happened at the end of the movie, before the very end of the movie, he goes running out nude. In the script, he was supposed to wear the robe he wore on the way in, but he told Ari Aster, he's like, there's been too many times where the women get sexualized and they're vulnerable. He's like, let me just do this. So he made it a point to wear American Werewolf in London that shit up and run out there and make him the humiliated one. And credit to him that, you know, like he literally put himself out there to kind of twist that. And, you know, it works.
Oh no, it was I think male nudity, if you're trying to convey a true sense of horror or a true sense of panic, because female nudity in films has been so over sexualized and a thing, you know, the audience has been trained, and especially the male audience, the target demographic, the 25 to 40-year-old or 18 to 40-year-old male audience has been trained over the years to kind of objectify women to the point where it doesn't matter, you know, that they're in this horrible situation or they've been tortured for the, you know, previous hour of the film, you know, they're still looked at as sex objects. That whole scene where he's running out naked, to me, is really, again, really good choice by the actor, good choice by the filmmaker. It definitely makes the movie really awkward, and I do love and appreciate that about that. You know, there are these brilliant scenes interspersed through this movie where I'm just like, nailed it. You know what I mean? Just totally. That's like what was that? A green inferno moment of the film where you've got a naked man running around and you got a bunch of crazy cultists, and you know, kind of not the same situation but similar in spirit, to where it's just like, holy crap, like, you're naked, what are you gonna do?
I mean, and Ari Aster, he's not afraid.
I read that.
Go ahead, please, Jeff.
I was just gonna say, I read that trivia.
Yeah. I
read that piece of trivia.
Please talk about male nudity some more. Let's keep going.
Oh no! I just want to say I read that piece of trivia and I was like, okay, I got to give that guy credit, because to put yourself out there like that and do that, I'm like, that made that moment better. Had he run out in the robe, it would have been like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, you took time to put the robe back on.
Yeah.
You're freaked out. You wouldn't be like, well, let me get dressed.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have bolted, and I'm like, that makes more sense.
To run to, like, you're 4 hours away from anything, and you're naked in Suntown. Like, where are you going to go? Like, you know, like, that's it. Like, I don't know. Like, you're going to run to the woods,
especially without your SPF 30 sunscreen there for, you know, your friend that's just sort of exposed.
Yeah, with that tick problem, I mean.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a Stand By Me moment where they're in the swamp there with the leeches.
But Ari Aster makes the point, like, so far it's been 2 movies, because I mean, I'm not spoiling Hereditary, but when there's nudity in that movie too, it's like it's very matter of fact and upsetting, and it also works here too, where like you see it, but it's like it's not at all like, it's not done like in the typical way of like, oh, you want to see this. It's more like, well, this is happening and you're going to have to accept what's going on. And I think that's also important, because again, when we get to what was going on with Christian, which, by the way, if you want to talk about all you mentioned Patrick before about like things being on the nose. I mean, the name of the guy named being called Christian. Come on.
Yeah.
Honest. Yeah. Like I'm not against it. I'm not against that name. I think that's wonderful that the guy named Christian's the one that's the least interested in what's going on and pretends to give a shit. And then it's like, what are all these things about? Hey, what's that tree going on over there? Oh, you guys making Christmas? We got Christmas. Like, it's just, you know, whatever. I think it's very on the nose. I love it. But I think with what there is this matter of factness to the rituals to this, that you as the viewer, you are just a witness, right? We are the other traveler with them, and we have to accept or reject what we're seeing. And I think that's an important part of this movie.
It's almost like, you know, it reminds me so much of you know, the idea of conditioning the viewer is so kind of like what God, why can't I think of his name now? The director did with A Clockwork Orange, you know, where the scene where our friend, Kubrick, where Stanley Kubrick, you know, is conditioning the main character to violence and to become sickened by violence, and I almost feel like, you know, Ari Aster is doing that to his audience. It's like, you can accept or reject the images that I'm showing you, but ultimately, if you want to view my film, you're going to have to sit here and watch it, you know, and I feel like that's kind of what's happening to the characters in the film, and especially Danny. Danny especially, because she's just kind of taken it all in. Her character is just kind of, I don't want to say a mute witness, but definitely powerless in the film.
She was the least prepared, right?
Yeah.
Like that's, and when we get to the cliff diving scene, it's like you are just as like, because like the thing is like you talk about like not liking the characters. Like I thought I liked Josh for the most part also because I'm partially partially smitten by William Jackson Harper because he was Chidi in The Good Place and I adore him in that show. So it's hard for me not to not like him. But like he knew he's like, what's going on tomorrow? And then Pele's like cliff diving. He's like, really? And he's like, okay, I guess I gotta check this out, you know? And then like he was aware that Danny's family was gone. He was like, oh, by the way, you're gonna watch someone split their head open like a melon. And then another person's gonna fall feet first. Like neither one of those died.
Yeah.
You know, like, so it's like he knew he could have been like, hey, maybe sleep in. Like, here's another Ativan. Just, you know, like, we'll tell you about it later. Cause Will Poulter's character's like, wait, you guys let me sleep in? Like,
and poor Josh.
He was pissed. Of all days, you let me take a nap. I'm like,
oh God.
Okay, dude, you did not want to see what just went down. Okay.
Yeah,
he's a big Eli Roth fan. You can just tell, right? Like,
yeah, he's big into that series of movies. Yeah, he's a Saw fan. But let's talk about the character of Josh for a second, because I feel like the character Josh, you know, that character is like, I mean, here he is. He's going to Sweden. If the single most other character in the film from the standpoint of the character has got to be Josh. He's there to do, you know, to get information, to put together his thesis or whatever, his dissertation for his doctorate. You know, he's just trying to make the best of a bad situation. I feel like he's starting to catch on to this stuff very early on in the film. I would, and it makes sense from the standpoint of his character. And then, you know, he totally gets screwed by his buddy, you know, his friend. It's just that poor character endured so much cruelty. Poor guy.
Maybe the guy named Christian is going to come in and take somebody else's work claim on his own. That's not what he knows at all.
That never happened.
Not only does Christian walk in and go, hey, I'm also going to do mine on this. And if you want to work together, approaches it like it's his idea. And Josh is like, whoa, dude, you're being an asshole. I can't believe you're doing this. Yeah. And then later throws him under the bus. We don't associate him. We're not friends with him. I'm like,
yeah.
And he gets that look. The look from Danny is like, are you fucking serious right now?
The moment the one book, and I want to, like, please, before this episode ends, I need to talk about the holy books. I need to talk about them so badly. The moment one of them is taken, like, Christian blames the one African American in the entire of stealing the book. I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, it is like, oh, I don't know where he is, but that book's gone. Guess you got to go do that. It's like, can you just, like, I already don't like you. I don't like you, fake Chris Pratt. Can you not be, you know?
Well, and again, I think that part of the story then pulls me out of the story. And again, I don't know if maybe I'm just not smart enough to understand good filmmaking, but Christian's actions, and maybe Ari Aster is making a reference to, you know, the medieval Christian, you know, crusades essentially that happened in Sweden, and Christian is a stand-in for, you know, that historical antecedent. I don't know, but it's so inexplicable why Christian, because they don't establish that, with the exception of the very brief scenes where he seems uncomfortable with strong emotions from his girlfriend, and he seems like your average 20-year-old guy who's afraid, well, you know, my girlfriend's hot, but maybe I can't get a hotter girl. Like, there's nothing to establish his character as this deep-seated just jack off of a human being early on in the film. Like, his actions to me are so inexplicable from the standpoint of the beginning of the film. it's like you get a bit of an insight into his character, but then to like just totally double cross one of his good friends that he lived with, that they, went to college together with, that there's no precedent for it set early on in the film. So it really takes me out of the film, and it takes me out of Christian's character, because where's the motivation for that? Like, it's just so out of left field. So, you know what I mean?
With the director's cut, there's not the car wash. I was lying about that. The director's cut of the film is available on Apple TV if you have that service, or if you're fortunate enough to go out and buy like a region-free Blu-ray player and go buy it internationally. Like, that's another way, whatever reason, because Apple bought the rights for the US, so you're not going to find it anywhere else. There is some additional sequences, and there's a bit on them traveling when they're in the car going like north towards the colony or whatever. There's a discussion about their thesis, or what they call prospectus, or whatever it is. And Josh is like reading a book that talking about like the language of the people or whatever, which has the Nazi symbol on it. I mean, it is what it is. Some Uthark, right? You gotta get into that. It's Scandinavian. Who does the whiter than white? Whatever. Not reading too much into that. But,
well, yeah, I mean, I'm a history buff, Paul, so I know that the swastika, not the inverted swastika that the Nazis used.
Different meanings. So,
exactly.
I'm aiming low, much like Ari Aster at the beginning of the film. Right? I'm just punching lower. I'm like, I see, I mean, which one of those is the symbol on Yar's Revenge that flies out? I don't know. Is it a good Nazi symbol or the other one? I don't know. Anyway, so this discussion that's happening, and then at one point Danny says to Josh, like, well, like, isn't that what yours is going to be on? He's like, I don't know, I haven't made a decision yet. So it seeds that a little bit.
Oh man, see,
when they're in the apartment though, she's like, yeah, but you haven't even figured out what you want to do. And he's like, well, like, you see him already being uneven, but that little bit in the director's cut kind of that brings a little bit more in. Like, it doesn't ultimately change his actions, but you already see his like shit or get off the pot about his inability to pick a subject while they're in the car heading north, while Josh is reading up already on the languages.
Yeah,
a little bit there. There's a little bit. I mean,
that would have cleared up. I probably, now it's probably solidified in my mind that I need to see the director's cut, because again, that little bit of dialogue that could add context to the character's decision, I would have been like, okay, I get it. Like, this guy's a waffler. He's waffling on his girlfriend. He's waffling on emotional commitment and physical commitment. He's waffling on his dissertation or whatever, final project he's doing for his coursework. It's just, in the American, in the theatrical cut, that seems like such an inexplicable sea change that you're just like, who the hell is this guy? Like, what is this guy? Is he Darkman? Like, is he gonna wear somebody else's face? Like,
is it Liam Neeson underneath? He's gonna break someone's finger? Yeah.
It just it doesn't make any sense to me. I think that's where it really.
Well,
Darkman would have a huge problem in this town, because if the sun never goes down, he can only be out for 66 minutes in the daylight. That would have been a big problem.
He would have ruled that. He would have been the god of that cult.
And ultimately, we see that Christian isn't the one who wears somebody else's face.
Yeah,
but it does happen.
Yeah. He doesn't wear somebody else's face, not a person's face, but yeah. There is a face switch in the film.
Oh, yeah.
Which, according to the stuff I was reading, Ulf, who's the gentleman that lost his goddamn mind over Will Poulter pissing all over the ancestor tree, that was supposed to be Ulf wearing Mark's face in the temple when they hammer Josh for like taking photos of the book. I didn't realize that was him, but it makes perfect sense, because it was somebody in that village. I knew, like, I wasn't expecting to pull the face off and be like, Danny. Like, I didn't expect that, but
I was definitely getting Leatherface vibes in that. It was like the Swedish.
I thought it was the inbred person that they showed us, because he was making those guttural noises. Man. I was like, did they put it on him and just say, hey, walk in there? Because he's just kind of going, So
Oh, God.
there's no like deep breathing. I'm like,
You guys a question
so
about the inbreeding portion of the colony. Can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
So I thought I had a
Sure.
revelation, and my wife, like, she kind of shot me down. And of course, I want to believe I'm right. So I'm going to pitch it to you guys about this. Two things. One, the idea that they purposely inbreed so they can create like these like prophets, right? That are clear-minded, and that's what you see the person there with the finger paints, like, you know, in the books, right? And then they interpret it. Like, look at how many books are in that church. Those are all finger paintings. Like, who makes the decisions? Like, that is crazy to me. That's scary. That it's like, I don't know if that's taking the piss out of the notion that you could take any religious text and take what you want out of it if you want to force a point. Like, maybe that's the context.
Yeah.
But then the other thing too is they talk about how, like, because it's inbred, they have a clear thought process, and like they're basically they're clear-minded or with it, whatever, or unclouded, as I guess what they said.
unclouded, yes.
At the end of the movie, you see that person on a cloud finger painting, but then when they get to the actual points of sacrifice, they point out Pele and they say, your unclouded vision brought us this May Queen. Pele's been an artist the entire film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is he one of them? Is he one of the unclouded? Is he a result of inbreeding? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's,
like,
wow, yeah.
It blew my mind because it's like, but then we got some big discussion about it, and I was like, just because you're inbred doesn't mean you're not capable of functioning. I was like, look at the royal family. Prince Philip just passed away.
Yeah.
But it's like, because you see him like always drawing art and always like drawing things all the time, and
Yeah.
him. You mentioned his like very innocent and likable face. Like, you wonder about that, and.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you talk about in Patrick, you mentioned earlier how you felt like people are like, well, he masterminded it all. I don't know if he did, but I believe he thinks he did because he had the clarity of vision to believe he was going to do it. I think that's a big thing. So that's the part that blew my mind, like on my this time watching through, because why would you use that familiar phrasing, right, to describe the person that is finger painting in these books and also describing one of the characters we got to know? Like, that seems oddly specific to me.
Hey, I do think that. Sorry, Paul, I'm going to jump in there. Pele is like, out of all of the people in this film, you know, and out of the original 5 characters that you meet, you know, towards the beginning of the film, Pele is, or Pele or whatever his name is, he is the most likable, right? He's the most relatable. He's the one commiserating with Danny. He's the gregarious one. He's embracing his fellow cult members. He seems to be the peacemaker amongst the group of friends of the group of unlikable people. You know, I mean, it would make sense that here's a guy who's, you know, extremely clever, or maybe not extremely clever, but who's, you know, so bought into the cult ideology and so bought into his mission, you know, that he's able to read these people clearly and clearly understand their motivations and you know, bring home the metaphorical bacon to the cults.
Yeah, he might have a high emotional intelligence, is what you above, right? And then also, like, there's the bit too where what was I going to say about him? Like, when he talks about Danny, like, do you know how, you know, do you know what it's like to be held? But he even says to them, and this is something that, like, I've watched this movie 4 times now, right? So but I didn't watch it 3 times in 1 week like Jeff did. I saw the theatrical run, and then just a brief side note, they had the director's cut for like a week. And I caught it, but they had problems with the projection of it. So the framing was weird. So when you got to the additional scenes where they're speaking in like their native tongue, we couldn't see the subtitles. And we're like, what is going on? Like, it was very frustrating. Right? So when we bought the director's cut at home and watched it, I'm like, we can see the words now. This makes more sense, you know? So that was great. But he says to Danny specifically, he's like, I lost my parents in a fire.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of fire are we talking about? Is it a particular type of triangle house? Because I'm thinking that's what happened.
No, it's totally what happened. I mean, it's all but if we use the movie, if we use clues in the movie as a signpost for the character's motivations, or if we assume that Ari Aster is telegraphing the character's motivations in a really kind of literal and creative way, then 100% Pele's parents died in that fire, because it would explain his buy-in to the cult. And it's really strange to me, like, what are the chances that this guy's parents were randomly selected, or I think they could also volunteer.
Factor going on there. There was the Powerball thing.
Yeah, exactly. They had the Powerball drawing, and it's like it's just it's really that film, that aspect of the cult is, to me, again, inexplicable, disturbing. You're just like, what the actual F is happening here,
So,
Jeff, see, this is.
Please go ahead. I was going to ask you a question, but please, you have a point. Like, please.
I was going to say what you guys have just touched on, and this is why I'm not an intelligent film watcher, because it takes me a few times to catch things.
Are you unclouded?
Now that you've brought forward the Pele thing,
yes, unclouded. Where are your finger paints?
They're actually right here. If you can hear, I have the pages right here.
Yeah. Happen. Like, I don't even know. Like,
and really quickly, Jeff, I don't want to derail what you're about to say, but can we talk about the kid looking like one of the creatures, or I don't want to say creatures, one of the irradiated mutants from the remake of The Hills Have Eyes, where they break into that house in the 1950s style house in the nuclear site test town, and there's that dude laying in the chair, and the kid from Midsommar kind of resembling a bit resembling those nuclear. I was just like, it was so over the top. It
was a bit heavy-handed. I mean, okay, have you either of you guys seen Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood?
Yes.
Not the director's
A couple of these scenes just miss. Well, the director's cut has a cliff diving scene, if you can get a hold of that. But in some aspects, as we're discussing this, I'm feeling these certain moments that happen, and especially with seeing the kid, we just needed Keenan Ivory Wayans popping up going, message.
Yeah.
Like,
but
hey, do you
kind
get
of
it?
Down this whole society, because they're all, I mean, it's kind of almost like the idea of perfection, like in some people's minds, right? Like it is this, perfect white, like vista, whatever, right? And it almost feels like the more disfigured you are, the closer to God you are. Like I almost feel like that's the way it would feel like, because you're the most clouded because you're not one of them.
Yeah.
That's kind of, but you're right. It is off-putting, but it's like it's the one outside of the violence. It's the one smudge. Like, and I'm not trying to like say that person's a smudge, but it's like the one like imperfection of their community.
Yeah.
And of course, it just stand out a lot more. It is horrific and over the top, but
it's kind of hammy, Paul. It just struck me as a bit hammy, like making him that. I mean, I don't know. I was kind of.
A literal cloud at the end. I still have questions about, but I mean, it's part of the process, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that go on here where like, oh, that's how the sausage is made. I mean, I'm not gonna, that's fine at this point.
It's like, wow, that the Habsburg chin really took a bad turn, or a hard left in Sweden. You know what I mean? It's
no, you just don't expect for them to ask for like in their ringman to cut them, right? To be like, cut me. It was bad. It was bad. I understand why.
Yeah.
No,
so Paul, you had a question you wanted to ask.
I was going to ask you, Jeff, because I mean, this is Patrick. When did you've watched this film? But did you watch it again recently, or have you just watched it the one time?
I just watched it the one time, but it was really affecting. There were scenes that
because there's a lot that's sticking with you, and I think that's a good sign of a. I mean, however you feel about the movie, I think it'll show you how affecting a movie is if it sticks with you, right? So
it really was.
Yeah. So Jeff, I want to put this to you because this year, you watched it for the first time of 3 recently. How did you feel about once you start coming around to the notion of the shared experience with the breathing and the harmonizing of the people and how like the synchronicity of all of it, how it all kind of like there's like even with like the eating where like like none of them would start until like the specific people started. There's a bit where in the background while the main characters are talking, you see 5 people like consoling a baby, and they're all kind of getting in the same like they're all getting in sync. And then with Danny, when eventually like we're not even getting into like the finally when she cries in front of somebody is the moment she's accepted, because she's always fighting showing her true emotion around anybody until the very end. Mm-hmm. Like, how did you feel about the synchronicity of the group? Because I think that's something that is there and just keeps slowly seeping into you of like, this is a shared experience amongst all of them. How would you feel about that?
Well, the first time I watched it, I wasn't quite sure what was happening. I was like, is it a shared experience? I'm like, is there something else going on where they're feeling the same things these people are going through? Are they feeling the pain that the guy was going through when he fell off the cliff? Were they feeling Danny's pain when she was crying? I wasn't sure. So Leanne and I talked about it. She goes, no, it's more of a shared experience. Like, because they're all so close, it's just what they do.
Yeah, like, I don't think it's a spiritual thing, since I don't think
it went over my head.
Yeah,
I was thinking, is there a supernatural element going on that I didn't quite pick up on? So I was a little confused, but seeing it again the next 2 times, I understood more of what they were doing. It's like, it's a shared experience. This is how they live. This is how they all feel together. They grieve together. All of this, and it brings them closer is what I think ultimately is what that's leading to.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's a big thing, especially like the first time you see Danny actually have like relief is the last shot of the movie. Like, I think that's important, but like even when they're in the LSD fields and she's trying to run to the outhouse and being like, nope, she's trying not to cry in front of people. And then later on, there's a bit where she runs near the final house, the triangle house, and she's trying to like not like break down because one, like it pisses Christian off because he doesn't want his mopey girlfriend to be mopey because she lost her family because Christian's a jackass. But also like I think that she doesn't want her burden anybody else's burden, which is a big part of this film, is that she doesn't have to go it alone. And it's like, and it's a weirdly therapeutic thing considering the amount of horrific like murder we see in this movie.
Yeah, which is
kind
of strange too, Paul. You make a great point, because the horrific murder, with the exception of the last maybe 20 minutes of the film, all of the horrific murder, you see the result, but they don't actually portray it on screen, which I thought was a kind of a cool choice, because it definitely adds to the tension. It's almost Hitchcockian in a way, how this it's implied. You know what I mean? It's like it's very Fincher like 7, where it's like you always see either or you see the aftermath. You don't see the actual process, and it's like which is almost like that's not the point. And which I get, like, you know, you could easily shown the one dude with like when he gets like strung up in the chicken coop. What's his name? I remember Simon. There's something called the Blood Eagle, which I was reading about, which is supposedly ritualistic thing where I didn't realize that he was still alive technically until like the 4th time through watching this movie. Like, that is horrific, you know, like and I think that's the most visceral thing you see, aside from Josh getting clocked in the head and the 2 willing participants, right? The Logan's Run.
The Logan's Run, which I made that joke while watching the movie the last time. They're like, we've been watching Austin Powers. I'm like, you've seen Logan's Run, haven't you?
but I want to ask you guys. Go ahead, Pat. Go ahead.
Oh no, go for it, Jeff. I was just gonna say, you know, in regards to the communal sort of nature of the cult, I think that's a really, you know, Ari Aster made a deliberate sort of choice there to kind of show that very subtle kind of process of cult programming, right? Like the shared experience, the oddness of it, right? Because as an audience member, when you see these people, you know, freaking out on cue, or when you see them participating in the pain of you know, a person who may or may not have ended up joining the cult and ruling as the May Queen in perpetuity for, it's like your insight into like, oh wow, this is how this cult works, and it's very disturbing. It created conflict in me. It was very affecting for me, right? Like it created this weird sense of like, if I were the character, do I join it? Do I let it happen? Do I stop? And eventually, like when you see in Pele, you see that becomes second nature in all the cult members. It's totally second nature. They're not in any way sort of self-aware. They're just in it, and they're just experiencing it. And it is so terrifying to know that that's how real world cults operate. I thought that was a really good decision on the part of Ari to include that sort of in the film.
Right. And real brief on that, on the watch I did today, I was watching that scene where we see the two elders essentially sacrifice themselves in their, not so graceful swan dives off the cliff. I was watching the people as they reacted, and there's a few.
They saw other people. They saw other elders die before them. That they had to figure that out ahead of time. Like they've had 70 years to figure this out, right?
They needed a little panache. They needed some showmanship.
Like not a belly flop, but if you did a cannonball or something, or a can opener, I don't know, like a ham and eggs off the, off the top,
or a nest plunge,
like a triple Lindy, Lindy school.
Triple Lindy would have done the job, or like a backwards nesty plunge off the old sacrificial rock there.
See more,
and
failed Red Bull flyers.
I'm gonna throw out my love of. I love pro wrestling, so I would have, appreciated like a Macho Man style elbow, or somebody doing like an Eddie Guerrero frog splash.
Oh my god! Frog splash off of a cliff. Oh man, that's gonna leave a mark.
Easy shooting star press at that height. You could do a shooting star press. It's fine. It's fine.
No, if what would have been amazing is a tombstone pile driver if they both jumped off together.
And we would have just needed JR going, by God, they're dead. They killed themselves. By God. Where have we gone? What was my point? I derailed.
I'm gonna beat it and then put it into the eternal fire. So that's what I'm gonna do. It's what I yeah, sorry. Please, we're having a very serious conversation. I'm like, what about trick jumps?
Or just like if somebody had said, wait, and they set up a table right on the rocks, so they could have just slammed right through the table.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Match. Anyway, go ahead.
Sorry, Jeff. That would have been amazing.
No, that was great. I loved every second of that. Briefly, I was just saying that I was watching the people's reactions. There are some that were more into it bodily. They were throwing themselves over. They were heaving. The children were kind of moving around violently. And a few of the older people were just standing there, making the noises. They weren't really moving. I was like, okay, that's interesting. That was interesting for me to see. I'm like, there's different levels to how they're all feeling it.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, they're all sharing in that experience.
I talk about I went to a Pentecostal church like in high school, and it was like one of the more like mainstream. So there's like no snakes, no drinking of battery acid, whatever, right? But it was more of the speaking in tongues and the prophesying and all that bullshit, and just seeing like the level of interactivity in the church and the crowd and the read and response. That's why like with this, it's like, I don't see it. It's that much different. Yeah, these people jump to their death, and people are reacting. It's not that dissimilar to the things I mean, other than like, the people jumping to their death. I mean, that only happened like around Easter. It didn't happen every like, no, I'm kidding. But like in terms of like just the shared experience, the shared emotional experience, like I get that just because of just like Patrick, you keep using the word cult. I would just like you flip that around with like religion or like lifestyle. Like this is that kind of vibe of like you're all included no matter what. Like my big disillusionment with a lot of things, and I'm not going to get like psychoanalyze myself, but I was baptized Pentecostal. I never once spoke in tongues because I always believed it was going to be like a lightning bolt from God, and I wasn't in control of myself, and that was never the case. And people started looking at me weird because I wasn't doing those things. I'm like, I don't know. I think you're all making it up. Like, and eventually I was like, well, if that doesn't feel right, what about the rest of this? And I started pulling some threads and making some decisions. Long story short, I didn't eat the pie, is what I'm saying. But
I have a question for you guys. So, I mean, I keep using the term cult, and maybe that's a bit presumptuous of me. I don't know, but
film description here, like you even go to IMDb, it says pagan cult. I'm like, it's and I'm not saying you're saying the wrong word.
No.
That people should like. I think that this group of people, as much as the things they do are kind of screwed up. I mean, there's a lot of screwed up things in the name of religion. There's a weird sympathy to them too.
I was going to say, that leads my question, Paul, and I want to ask you guys. Do you think Ari Aster was trying to portray this community of people in a sympathetic light to the viewer? Because I get the sense, Paul, that by the end of the film you're not really judging, or at least I get the sense from your experience in life, and what you're bringing to the film as a viewer. I get the sense that I don't know if you sympathize with this community, but I get the sense that you're not judging them and you're kind of taking a step back and looking at them and their rituals objectively. Do you think that was like a choice? And same question to you, Jeff. Do you think that was a thing that Ari Aster was trying to do, was trying to get the viewer of the film to instantly kind of buy in? Because it sounds like you guys have a little bit of buy-in in terms of, well, hey, maybe this isn't a cult. Maybe these people aren't, explicitly or malicious or they're just, this is how they live. I wonder if that was a deliberate attempt by the director to get the viewer to look at this community of people that way, sympathetically or just at least non-judgmentally.
Paul, do you want to go first, or what? I'll jump in.
Please.
I definitely kind of, by the end of the film, more understood a little bit of what they were doing. I didn't fully buy in, but I was like, well, this is how they operate. This is how they've done this for years. It's just different than how we live our lives day to day.
Yeah.
I don't fully agree with everything, but I understand their belief of, well, these people, when they reach a certain age, they give themselves back. It's like recycling. And then the next children that are born will inherit those names. And that person sort of lives on through the community. It's weird. It's off-putting. But by the end, I was like, okay, it's just how they live. It's sort of like an Amish community, like Paul was saying. They have their way of living. We may not understand it, but that's just how they are. This is the extreme version of that, because the Amish, from what I understand, are very, nice folk.
Yeah.
For the most part. I don't think anyone is
That's the right thing, but there's not a lot of ritualistic murder that goes on.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Right.
Like there was the old joke of like if you did like the sound of like how coconuts, like the Monty Python with the horses, like you hear the coconuts and it's like bang and the coconut's going faster. It's like, what's that? That's an Amish drive-by. Like that's like, you can't. There's not a lot of violence there, because like how fast can you pull away with a horse and buggy? Like shooting somebody, not very fast. I think there's a lot of murder, like a lot of ritualistic murder in the Amish communities.
Yeah. And I mean, I think
Leanne and I.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Jeff.
Just a lot of butter.
I was just gonna say, Leanne and I were talking about this, and she was like, "Yeah, I totally understand where they're coming from. I get what their community is," and in her eyes, she was saying, we may not understand it. She goes, but I don't see anything wrong if that's how they live their life. They're not it's not like they're going out. Well, she just understood what they were doing.
Yeah,
I understood, but at the same time, I'm like, exactly.
Yeah, you
My
empathize.
eyes was like, you're still bringing in people from the outside, and they're being murdered.
Yeah.
So you can give your sacrifice. I'm like,
yeah,
that's where I'm like, hey, that's kind of stepping outside the boundaries. You want to do it amongst yourselves.
That's fine.
It's
But
like,
even then, it's like
cool. When you cross that line, I'm like,
and that's what
Leanne's sitting here shaking her head, going, "No, that's fine."
Yeah, and that's what was objectively. That's what was again another strange element to the film was that this was a group of people that was objectively committing murder and doing objectively evil things, things that wouldn't pass in a normal society, but as the viewer, you're kind of like in this weird space of like, well, just leave. You know what I mean? It's just like you just leave these people alone. But it was so weird to me. Again, I keep going back to inexplicable, and then that's just that's why this film was so I think affecting to me. I was just like,
I'll say this on top of everything else I've said so far is that if you saw at the beginning when they were all brought in, like the beginning of the opening ceremonies or whatever you want to call it, right? There were other travelers brought in, and then the one lead person spoke English for everybody. Like there was other characters there, and I'm not talking just the other couple. There were other people there in like regular clothes, not white gowns. We don't know what happened.
Yeah.
So, like, what I'm saying is like, because they're not in the pyramid, right? So they're like, it's almost like you talk about this being murder, which it straight up is. I'm not saying they didn't kill these people, but I'm going to see in their mind, it's a value judgment of like, we've selected this group, and if they could follow what we believe, cool. But if they've proven folly, then they're worthy of sacrifice, which I don't agree with, but it's not dissimilar to a lot of major religions, like just, oh, you didn't follow the rules, I guess you're dead now. Like, and that's the part that is like, well, that seems kind of in line. But so they're sympathetic in the sense of like, they're just like, they're doing what they've been doing for years. I will also throw out there, I just want to point out though, at the very end, in the triangle, the two guys that volunteer, I think within the last seconds of the place going up, they realized that they got a wrong bill of goods.
Yeah.
So that's Ari Aster showing, like they believe until they're both set on fire.
Oh yeah, definitely. You could tell that they definitely did not feel like they got everything that was promised on that particular bill of sale. Yeah, by their facial expressions and it's kind of like when you. It's all fine and dandy when they're loading all the dead straw into the house and you're sitting there relaxing and just kind of, thinking about what might happen. But when, flames actually are licking your chin, yeah, that's the time you start regretting some poor decisions,
So here, you guys probably have a question about like some of the bodies in the pyramid, and I can mention that on the way out here because I know there's a lot to dig into this, right?
Yeah,
and I think we're going to cover all of it. The young lady, the fiance, what's her name here? Connie. Left. We don't know what happened to her.
Yeah,
but she's in the pyramid at the end. Because there's a bit in the movie in the director's cut whenever a Christian goes over to talk to the girl that made the love rune, and we don't have to even get into the group sex thing. That's just
God, yeah, that's
we just the less said.
Yeah.
So he talks to her and it's like, what's going on with this tree? It's like it's part of a holiday or whatever. He's writing notes. There's a deleted scene showing what happens to that tree, and they take it and throw it into this like creek to sacrifice to the goddess. And they're like, but the goddess is still hungry. So they're going to threaten to throw a young person in there. And then they don't because Danny steps forward to say, don't do this or whatever. Right. It's just, it was a back-to-back scene of her watching them do terrible things to people. So I could see why they didn't cut it, why they cut it for the theatrical. But at the very end in the director's cut, you see Connie waterlogged and covered in ornaments being drug into the pyramid.
Oh,
so she was the sacrifice to the mother of the creek or whatever it was. So that I just want to explain to you guys, because there's one body in there that you didn't see that much of. It was Connie. She got drowned and with a large rock put on her, and that was it for her. So,
well, hey, can we talk about really quickly? Can we talk about the tree of the elders that was more like a stump? That's the elephant in the room. It really wasn't a tree. It was like a really interesting stump, but it was still a stump, right? Or was I so in such a delusion at that point and in such a stupor over this film that I missaw that Josh was or not Josh. Yeah, it wasn't not Josh. It was Mark was basically taking a piss on their sacred stump.
It was a tree that collapsed that was like burnt. They put all the ashes of their elders on, so he was peeing on a dead tree. Yes.
I mean,
yeah, and he even pointed that out.
Yeah.
He blatantly pointed that out. He goes, "It's dead. What does it matter? It's a dead tree." They're like, "Oh, but it houses the spirits of our dead." He's like, "But it's also a dead friggin' tree. Where else did you want me to pee?"
Yeah. It's funny because, like, especially earlier in the movie when he looks at Ulf, he's like, "That guy's going to kill me and wear my skin with me," and then that's actually what happened.
He does it. Yeah, it's like.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. This movie telegraph. And again, I don't know if those were deliberate. They had to have been deliberate choices.
They were all.
Okay.
Yeah, they were all. Especially later, like earlier on, it's like, what are they doing? It's like those kids are playing a game called Skiing the Fool. Well, found out what happened. Like,
yeah.
It's
they telegraphed that because we all knew. Okay, Mark's the fool. When's it coming? And it came. So I think maybe we can just jump to. Final thoughts, what we thought. One thing I do want to mention here is I thought the ending of the film with Danny sort of accepting where she ended up and her smiling at the end, to me was very reminiscent of The Witch.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Where there's tragedy, where do I fit in? I'm alone. Well, wait, there's this group that's accepting of me. I guess I'm fine. I'll be fine.
Any other family.
And I was like, okay.
Be fine. Yeah, I like that.
I have a different take on the ending, and I have a different. I mean, this film. There's so much to unpack that we could talk about this for another episode, but and I'm totally available for that if you guys want to do that. But the ending, I kind of have a different hot take on that because when you think about the group all sort of doing this weird. I keep making these judgments here. They're all kind of engaging in this group communal mourning, right? And it's very obvious, and they're all sort of tearing at themselves. And Danny's the only one who's feeling a different emotion that the rest of the community isn't outwardly expressing. I don't know if they're feeling it internally, but it kind of made me go, huh. So she still is an outsider, or she hasn't fully, bought into the ideology, or, maybe she hasn't completely emptied her cup of the old Kool-Aid there. So it definitely left me in this limbo state where I was just like, well, either she's going to be, the next person to be in the house, or, she lives her life with the cult. It was I was just like, it's like, again, if we think about the calculated choices by Ari Aster, and the telegraphing of essentially the plot to the audience, it really kind of like made me think, okay, so what is truly going on with this character? You know what I mean?
And I think that's a perfectly good way to feel, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a good spot to land on, because you're like, what is going to happen next? Like, and I think that's a good conversation to consider, right, going forward. And I think I don't know, like I think this movie's wonderful, and I think it's an important film in terms of if people like horror and want to experience something different and kind of twist your brain a little bit and then get your heart ripped out repeatedly.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. I think it's masterfully done. And bring me more,
Oh, Paul, I can totally see Midsommar 2, Rise of Baphomet, or Mother of Satan,
Midsommar, Spring Break.
Yeah, where she gives birth to the Baphomet goat monster, a la vis-a-vis VHS 2. I can't remember which VHS version it was, where Baphomet is born from his mom. Like, totally, let's make it happen.
Kind of emotional like this that will leave you in that kind of same spot. I would recommend the remake of Suspiria that's on Amazon Prime. That's also like a 2.5 hour movie, and we're not going to get into that right now. But if you want something that's going to mess with you, in a rip you spot, like, there you go. So
I still have to get to that one.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Midsummer 2 Spring Break should have the car wash scene.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
And Zac
Efron. Because if you're calling it Spring Break, I mean,
oh yeah,
if you're calling it Spring Break.
Oh yeah, we need a team of Swedish flight attendants.
The Swedish team from
who belong to the community, who are trying to recruit a busload of horny college bros.
Hostel 4 Midsummer Spring Break. That's
Hostel 4. Oh,
so do
man.
you want to set this in the 80s as well? I mean,
oh man, yes, like American Horror Story. Yeah, the sleepaway camp or whatever.
So I know that we have gone way longer than I anticipated on this because there's so much to unpack. So I'm going to leave this to you guys. Do we? I think we all kind of just went our own ways here, and I'm fine with that. But I don't want to keep you guys here any longer than absolutely necessary. Do we want to put a pin in this and maybe come back for another brief session and unpack a little bit more? Or do we want to call this our show? I mean, we can do 2 parts and we can schedule another call. Whatever you guys want, I'm down for whatever.
In honor of the Midnight Sun, I want to say no, because the sun has to set sometime, and I think there's a lot here, and we've not covered. Like, I think this is a dense film, and we're not going to cover everything. Like, did you guys even see the face in the trees? Because there was a face in the trees literally at one point in one of the scenes, and it never happened again. We're not going to talk about that, but it happened.
Man, there's so much.
It, I didn't see it.
I got to watch the movie again, but I mean. Yeah. I'm ready to do it. If you guys want to do it, I'm okay with it. But you have to promise me that we'll review Mandy at some point too, the Nicolas Cage vehicle by
Mandy. Like that's another 2 hours. We'll get into
I still have to watch Mandy. I still have to watch.
It's going to be an hour and a half conversation about the Cheddar Goblin. We'll just do it then. It's
the Cheddar Goblin. Yeah, 100%. We're gonna spend an hour on the Cheddar Goblin.
That is the only thing I know about.
Oh,
the Cheddar Goblin is the only thing I know about that movie because I looked it up. I had to look it up.
Oh, Paul, you saw it, right?
I saw. Yeah, I got to see it in the theater. It was crazy.
Chainsaw Duel, Jeff.
Yes,
you gotta.
Let's just do this. We'll table Midsommar and we'll go to M films. And whenever you guys want to do Mandy, I'll watch that again.
Oh, I'm watching it again.
I'll watch Nick Cage get just violent as all get out and underwater drinking vodka in a bath. And we'll talk about that. We'll do that. That is the anti-Midsommar.
That is the anti-Midsommar. Mandy it has the same sort of. There's a
triangle house.
There's a love situation happening there. There's a horribly toxic love affair. There's a cult.
There's some lumpy people. I mean, Nick Cage. We'll just talk about it. It's fine.
Oh yeah, Mandy. Right. Mandy. Sorry, Jeff. I didn't mean to derail the Midsommar podcast with Mandy.
No. You're fine. I think we've all said our piece on Midsommar to this point. So, Pat, I know Paul, you said no, but Pat, if you and I want to schedule another call at some point, we can go a little bit deeper into Midsommar if we want.
Yeah,
I'm perfectly fine with that.
My apologies.
And then I'll say this
4 times. I'm good.
Hey,
Paul's over it. He's done.
Paul, I understand. I understand.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
But I think the 3 of us should reconvene for Mandy at some point.
Oh yeah.
I will watch it, and we'll get together. We'll use that group chat and Inside Baseball. I'm not editing any of this out because, I like people to know what may be coming. Yeah, and we'll get together and discuss Mandy. But I will say, the Chainsaw Duel better be damn good because I have a high bar set after watching Texas Chainsaw 2 with Dennis Hopper and the chainsaw fight. So
no, It's let's just say size matters, okay, Jeff?
It's a thing.
Yeah. and let's just say and you can thank me and Paul when we get together to do the Mandy episode, because it's going to change your life.
All right.
It's on Shudder too, so I encourage everybody else to watch it on Shudder, and we'll get to Mandy at some point. That would be amazing.
Oh, so good. So good.
All right, so I'm going to leave this up to you guys. Do you guys have anything to promote, anything social-wise? I know, Paul, you got your podcast, so I'll let you do that. If there's anything else, Pat, same with you. So open floor to you guys. Put out whatever you want.
I want you to spend time promoting your podcast, my friend, because I don't really have anything other than
a Mandy Watch 2021. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I host 2 podcasts because I'm a glutton for punishment. I do Invasion of the Podcast with my co-host Steve, and we talk about all things pop culture. We had just recently talked about the documentary Last Blockbuster, and then we're going to pivot wildly into Clerks 2, because you go from videotapes to videotapes. But we cover everything too. This year is the year of the sequel, so once a month we cover a sequel to see if it's worthy of what happened before. We've recently covered RoboCop 2. We talked about the Donner cut of Superman 2. There's a lot of fun to be had there. And then we recently talked about Freddy versus Jason, that high art. You guys can find that at Invasion of the Podcast. The other show that I do is called Strange Highways with my co-host Terry, and we've been watching the original Twilight Zone series episode by episode chronologically, and we're now into the midpoint of season 5. So we're at the the goal line's near.
So Paul, question for you: you're not going to stuff me in that dirty old trunk now, would you? Or what? Or I forgot the dummy episode.
Oh, the dummy! No, that was okay. Yeah, we're not going to throw you in a trunk. That was a good episode. But no, we're halfway through season 5. It's bittersweet getting towards the end of that series, but we've been watching episode by episode. You guys can follow us there. We're about to cover was it season 5, episode 20, From Agnes with Love. Spoiler, it's not good, but we're going to talk about it. But it's been fun to kind of dig in and let things soak in, watching it episode by episode, because it's easy to binge watch things anymore and kind of forget everything. So it's been fun to kind of really get in and let things kind of ruminate, right? So, but yeah, that's the 2 shows I do. I talk a lot. I hope if people like me talking, I apologize. I'm the reason this episode went long. That's my fault. I apologize.
I love it. Hey, if you ever do an episode on the 70s film with Anthony Hopkins and what was her name? Redhead, the movie Magic, which was
oh god.
We just covered 3 episodes ago, honestly. You should go listen. That was the first time I watched Magic from 76 or something.
Yeah.
We just covered that because Burgess Meredith was in that, and he was in 4 episodes of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah, and Margaret, Anthony Hopkins.
It's wonderful, and it's covered it. So look at that. I'm sorry you couldn't be on.
Damn it.
Yeah. I showed that movie to Leanne thinking it would be something fun to watch, and we both walked away going, no. Hopkins is good, but I don't know. I came away not really.
Yeah, we're going to do that episode, Jeff.
You guys should do that, yeah. It's on HBO Max. You guys should cover that. But no, we literally just covered 2 or 3 episodes.
Leanne's got to be in on that episode.
A few episodes here.
Yeah,
Leanne. No. I'll put Leanne on the Magic episode so she can vent to everyone about how much she.
If we're going to do another episode, we got to do the Tom Hanks 80s vehicle Mazes and Monsters.
Because look at this. You got Midsommar, you got Mandy, you got Magic, and you got Mazes and Monsters.
All-star.
I think you found your groove here, Jeff. It's everything M. It's all.
That's what it is.
Blockbuster lineup starting in the M's.
I'm having a revelation.
They should be M movies. There you go.
Yes.
That's your theme for May.
Movie reviews by alphabetical order. Who's done that?
A to Z, all movies ever. All right.
And make sure you say that you copyright Jeff alphabetical movie review.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get a trademark on that and everything. Yeah, because I'm looking at my shelf here and I'm like, oh, geez, I have all these in alphabetical order. Oh, my God. Starting with numbers and then going through.
Ooh, numbers. Yeah. Or characters,
But,
special characters.
I am looking forward to doing something on the original Dawn of the Dead. So, Pat.
I'm there. Oh, we're doing it. That's going to be a 4-hour-long episode.
open invitation to you too as well, Paul. But I'll let you gentlemen go now because I've held you for far longer,
awesome.
than I anticipated.
Awesome. This is a lot of fun. Thank you. Praise the sun.
Praise
the sun, indeed. And Paul, are you ready to do the dive off of the podcast here into the?
I'm actually on the second floor, and I'm gonna do the face first one because when you break your femur, that's terrible. I don't need the Gallagher hammer. I'm gonna face first into the podcast rock below.
I just want to destroy. I want to pulverize my feet and ankles, so I'm just left writhing on a rock for.
I mean, I do feel like we should do the sunset flip, like yeah.
No, if I were going to go out that way, the thing I would do is get about a 5-foot running start and do like a Bruce Lee kick right off the flying kick right off the edge of the cliff. All right, you guys. Well, hey, it's been.
I would just look like Bam Bam Bigelow falling on somebody from the top rope. Let's just be honest. All right,
slap the elbow before you
gentlemen.
jump off.
Guys, thank you so much. This has been great. I look forward to it again. So you guys both, an open invitation to come back whenever.
Nice. It's been a lot of fun. Good meeting you, Paul, and I'm definitely going to check out that Magic episode because, whoa, that movie's heavy.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you guys for talking about Midsommar. It was a lot of fun.
All right, guys. You guys take care.
Same to you.
All right, bye-bye.
And just like that, Paul, myself, and Pat sat down and discussed Midsommar. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun recording it. And as we said, Pat and myself will most likely be getting back together soon to talk a little more about the movie. I understand why Paul had to tap out. It's very heavy, and there's so much to unpack. So much. My own thoughts, final thoughts here, I guess to quote Jerry Springer, I'm going to recommend you see it. If you haven't seen it, watch it. If you listen to this and hadn't seen it, then you were spoiled. And I said we were going to spoil things. Also, in the future, look forward to an episode covering Mandy, where Paul and Pat may be coming back for that. I haven't seen Mandy, so I'm really looking forward to that. I had a lot of fun talking with these guys. I hope to do it again in the future, either with the two of them together or even myself and Paul and myself and Pat, however it works out. I hope you guys had a lot of fun listening. And go check out Paul at Invasion of the Podcast and check out Strange Highways. It was a lot of fun talking with these guys. You need to go listen to Paul's podcast. You can also check him out on episodes of Talk Without Rhythm, but I highly recommend you go seek out his podcast and listen to him. As you can tell, he knows his stuff. And Pat didn't really have anything, but he is always welcome in the Skewered Universe whenever he wants. Both these gentlemen have an open invitation, and I'm really glad that the first time they showed up, it was a lot of fun. And with that being said, you'll get links below for Paul's podcast and the socials for us. And keep enjoying that universe that's just a bit skewered.
Find the podcast at skewereduniversepodcast.podbean.com. It's also available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Stitcher. Search for Skewered Universe Podcast. Contact the show by emailing us at skewereduniversepodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter @SkeweredU, Facebook at the Skewered Universe group page, and Instagram @Skewered_Universe.